Alex, I spent 3 weeks on that green and green style sideboard last summer. Finger joints so tight you couldn't slip a thought between them. Then I got cocky. I reached for a can of high gloss poly that had been sitting on my shelf since the Bush administration, whipped it up like a milkshake, and slapped it on in a humid garage.
Oh no, I can already see where this is going. Did it look like a glazed donut that fell on a shag carpet?
Worse, it looked like the wood had developed a rare, bubbling skin condition. I had to sand the whole thing back to the skeleton. It's funny how we spend 100 hours on the joinery and then treat the finish like an afterthought, just some liquid we smear on at the finish line because we're tired of looking at the project.
It's the victory lap syndrome. You're so close to being done that you rush the one part the client actually touches. But honestly, Tiger, the finish aisle at the hardware store is a nightmare. It's a wall of chemical promises, and half of them sound like they were named by a marketing guy who's never seen a tree. How is a mere mortal supposed to choose?
Well, that's what we're digging into today. I've spent more time scraping off bad decisions than I care to admit, and I've finally gathered some real deal secrets from the folks who do this for a living. And spoiler alert, none of them involve shaking the can like a maraca.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Preparation. Everyone says sand until your arms fall off, but is there more to it than just brute force?
It's less about muscle and more about not being a cheapskate with your sandpaper. Professional finishers treat sandpaper like a cutting tool, not a rubbing tool. Once the grit is dull, you're just burnishing the wood and closing the pores, which is a recipe for a splotchy disaster when the stain hits.
So you're saying my habit of using the same piece of 220 until it's basically a smooth piece of gray construction paper is problematic?
It's a crime against forestry, Alex. When a pro works, they're looking for witness marks. You hit it with 80, then 120, then 150. If you skip a step, those deep 80 grit scratches stay there, hiding like little ghosts until you put the oil on. Then boom, it looks like a cat used your table as a scratching post.
I've seen those ghosts. They usually appear exactly when I think I'm done. What about grain fillers? I saw a video from Epic Woodworking where they were basically mudding the wood like a piece of drywall.
If you're working with open pore woods like oak or mahogany and you want that glass flat piano finish, you have to fill those canyons. Otherwise, your finish just sinks into the pores and looks pitted. It's a messy job. You're basically rubbing a slurry into the wood and scraping it off. But it's the difference between I made this in my garage and this belongs in a gallery.
Let's talk about the actual finishes. Polyurethane seems to be the default, but I've heard you grumbling about it in the break room. Why the hate?
It's not hate, it's just poly is like a plastic raincoat. It's tough, sure. You could probably spill battery acid on it and be fine, but it sits on the wood. It masks the soul of the grain. Lately, the pros are moving toward hard wax oils, brands like Osmo or Rubio Monocoat.
I've seen those. They're expensive, Tiger. Like organic truffle oil expensive.
They are. But here's the kicker. You only need one coat. You buff it in, it bonds with the wood fibers, and it's done. No waiting 3 days for layers to dry, no sanding between coats. And the best part? If you scratch a table finished with hard wax oil, you can just rub a little more on that spot. If you scratch poly, you're basically looking at a full refinish.
Okay, that actually sounds like a time saver, but what about the classic stuff? Shellac? I heard Stumpy Nubs talking about how it's basically the duct tape of finishes.
Shellac is the secret weapon. It's made from bug spit, literally, but it sticks to everything. If you have a piece of wood that's being stubborn, or you're worried a stain won't take, a spit coat of thin shellac seals the deal. It dries in minutes. I've used it to save projects that were headed straight for the burn pile.
Bug spit. Got it. Moving on from the insect secretions, let's talk application. To spray or not to spray? Because I've seen those HVLP setups and they look like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Spraying is like learning to fly a plane. It's intimidating, messy, and you need a respirator that makes you look like a beetle, but man, the results. Jonathan Katz-Moses does a great breakdown on this. If you're doing kitchen cabinets or anything with a lot of nooks and crannies, a brush is your enemy. You'll spend your whole life chasing drips.
But for the person who doesn't want to turn their garage into a hazmat tent, what's the pro way to do it by hand?
Wipe on. Always wipe on. Take your favorite varnish, thin it down 50-50 with mineral spirits, and just wipe it on with a lint-free rag. You're putting on thinner layers, so you need more of them, but you eliminate the brush marks and the pool of despair in the corners. It's the most foolproof way to get a finish that looks like it was born there, not applied.
You mentioned pools of despair. That sounds like a heavy metal band or a very bad Wednesday in the shop. What are the other big mistakes that make a pro cringe?
Not checking for glue spots. This is the one that gets me. You're all excited to finish, you wipe it on, and suddenly you see these white, ghostly blobs where the wood didn't take the finish. It's dried wood glue you didn't sand off. It's like the wood is waving a white flag of surrender.
And the fix is more sanding?
Always more sanding. Or you can wipe the piece down with mineral spirits before you finish. It'll mimic what the finish will look like and highlight the glue spots while they're still easy to fix. It's a 5-minute check that saves 10 hours of regret.
Speaking of regret, what about color? Stains are the bane of my existence. They always look blotchy on pine or cherry.
That's because pine and cherry are greedy. They soak up stain unevenly. The pro move there is a pre-stain conditioner or, again, that thin coat of shellac. It's like putting a primer on a wall. It regulates the thirst of the wood, so the color goes on like a smooth jazz track instead of a gravel road.
I've also noticed a lot of high-end furniture makers moving back to milk paint. It feels a bit shabby chic, doesn't it?
If you do it wrong, yeah. But check out some of the stuff on fine woodworking. They use it as a base layer, then sand it back and put oil over it. It creates this incredibly deep, layered look that you just can't get with a can of latex from the big box store. It's earthy, it's durable, and it's non-toxic. You could practically eat the stuff, though I wouldn't recommend it for breakfast.
Noted. No milk paint on my cereal. So, if you had to boil all this down for someone standing in their shop right now, holding a finished project in a rag, what's the one thing they need to remember?
Patience is the most expensive tool in your shop, but it's the only one that guarantees a result. You have to wait for the wood to tell you it's ready. Don't rush the dry times. Don't sand the next grit until the previous scratches are gone. And for heaven's sake, keep a clean shop. A single speck of sawdust falling into a wet finish is like a fly in a bowl of soup. It's all anyone is going to see.
I think I can handle that, though I might need to buy some actual sandpaper instead of relying on my smooth gray paper collection.
Treat yourself, Alex. Your walnut deserves better. At the end of the day, a finish isn't just about protection. It's the final handshake between you and the person who's going to use that piece of furniture for the next 50 years. You want that handshake to be firm, smooth, and honest.
That's a wrap for today's Tiger Den. Go forth and make something beautiful. And please, keep the bubbles in your soda, not your Polly.